Welcome everybody to this presentation. As Eglantine has already been saying, this will be 3 parts. I will highlight the TRICOT method and its legitimation to use it also for consumer testing. And then we follow with some practical logistics, how to do it in the field. And then we will conclude by a step-by-step illustration, how to use ClimeUp. In this case, not only for consumer testing, but in general, but the example will be for consumer testing, and it will be how to use the climate platform, how to create a TRICOT project, and how to link your enumerators to that project. This RTB Foods webinar is not the result of our effort only. Here in Nigeria, we have had several discussions with Jacob van Etten from Bioversity, who is leading the ClimeUp application in a current project, 1,000 farms, and we have also Kawe, who is working with Jacob, especially on ClimeUp and also on the capacity development of ClimeUp. Then we had discussions with Alexander, Dominique Dufour, Gérard and Go from Carbab, and Aurélie Beghoff as well, who have been giving inputs into this webinar. There are some other people who are also there, but they should also be mentioned if I have forgotten them. This is the outline of my introductory presentation. Introduction to TRICOT, what is the role of TRICOT in one CGIAR and the TRICOT principles. Then I'll go specifically into a question that has created a lot of debate between social and food scientists about how many consumers are needed to get robust data. Then we are going into an example of consumer testing in Benue State in Nigeria. I will illustrate the TRICOT application in consumer testing using this example. So I will go to the traits that will be evaluated, the open questions that will be in the questionnaire, and the consumer's information, a preparation of the food block from different varieties, ranked results of TRICOT, the results of a consumer testing, and then I will go into why are certain varieties liked more than others. And I will follow with some examples of what kind of results can be expected from TRICOT. And we have to understand this is an approach that is in development, and we are designing all kind of interdisciplinary approaches and techniques and statistical analysis. So I highlight some of the things that can be done with TRICOT, but a lot of more can be done. And then I also illustrate the consumers' covariance, like what the data you can get from consumers, how do they influence, how can you take them along in the analysis. And then we'll have the objective actually of the RTB Foods project, which is linking consumer testing to food science descriptive analysis for threshold determination. And I will conclude with how to situate TRICOT use in consumer testing in general. So TRICOT's role in one CGIAR. TRICOT is proposed as a method for late-stage breeding, a kind of structural method to upgrade the data of on-farm testing. On-farm testing a lot of times is not very centralized. A lot of data are not well managed, and it is kind of separate from all the breeding data, and that's what TRICOT has been identified to solve that. And so it has been specifically identified as a cost-effective way to do PVS, participatory variety selection. And the idea is that each farmer manages small tree plots only and compares those three, and that is part of a balanced incomplete plot design in which you a total of more varieties are evaluated. Then ClimeUp is a software platform designed to standardize and centralize and archive on-farm crop user data for proper integration with breeder, food science, and climate data. It's really to bring all these data together and to get a better, much better informed data set, combinations especially of data sets to make more informed breeding decisions possible. And then there's the 1,000 Farms project that, as I've already been mentioning, which is funded and is running for 4 years now, or will be running for 4 years. It just started. And a crucial part of that one is, of course, the TRICOT used as trials. As you see in the upper corner, there's a woman who has 3 small fields, just harvested, A, B, and C, there's 3 choices. That's where the project is focused on, but it will also focus on the post-harvest evaluation, and especially how TRICOT can be integrated in consumer testing. Of course, the products will also be made from roots from those small trials, but that's not part of, and that can then also be taken along into the evaluation of those plots. But that will not be the discussion of this presentation. This presentation, we will use TRICOT in a way that we are looking at 3 different food products for testing. So instead of fields, you put 3 different food products there. And what are the TRICOT principles? As I've been highlighting, it's a balanced, incomplete block design. So each consumer evaluates only 3 food samples. I'm now going to the food science application. I'm not talking about those small fields anymore. It's 3 food samples, while the total of number of varieties can vary from 8 to 20 or more. And the number of consumers to test depends on the total number of varieties evaluated, the expected variation you expect in your sample, and the degree of variation that you want to be able to measure. Then TRICOT evaluation with consumers ranks 3 different samples with the consumer from best to worst. So overall, and for specific important traits of the sample. So you have 3 samples in front of you, and you can say which one is the best, which is the worst in general, as you see it, as you taste it. And then you go also per specific traits that are identified. Here, there's no rating involved. You have concrete comparison between 3 samples. The best and the worst are identified. This makes consumer interviews short and lessens the burden on the respondent. And this is just an overview of how it kind of works to visualize it. Like, for example, I have 10 varieties. I have food products from 10 varieties to test. Then I make combinations of 3 varieties from those 10. And as you can see, you have package 1, 2, 3, 4, and they have all different combinations of those 10. And the number of packages you make is equal to the number of consumers you are going to test. And then you will see that they are sequentially balanced. And it means that, for example, here, package 1 to 5 will contain all varieties, and then package 6 to 10 will also contain all varieties. By doing that, you can finally analyze it, and then you can get to define the overall ranking of all the varieties that you have been looking into. And then you get different orders, of course, for the different traits and for the overall ranking. This is a kind of imaginary example. If you want to do consumer testing in rural areas and also in small towns and in big cities, I have an example here where Iwo is a small town, Osogbo is the big city. And in between, I've identified some places in the rural area. So you start, for example, with package 1 to 20. And then you go to another location and you go on like that. So you don't start with, you go package by package, number sequentially you go to make sure that you have all the varieties represented while doing consumer testing. And here, as you see, we have different segments, rural and city population. So how many consumers are needed? We had several debates on internet. There were several calls. And as I've been highlighting, the number of consumers needed depends on the total number of technologies that will be evaluated, the expected variation you expect in your sample, the degree of effect that you want to be able to detect. And for example, if I have 10 varieties, I will need between 284 to 635 participants. And this is calculated with a cohance D of 0.5, which of a rule of the thumb is a kind of medium effect. It's not that precise, but you can still get good data. In that case, because you have 284 consumers, you will have ×3, you will have 852 samples divided by the number of samples. You get 85 times you have your variety replicated in the incomplete block design. In case you want to include, especially if you want to include different segments between city and rural population, for example, it's really advisable that you increase those numbers because you get higher statistical power to just only look for example, at the city population, only looking at a specific ethnic group and what they like. So then you can increase your co-entity, and then you will need more participants. So, and what has to be mentioned there, which is mentioned with the start, a proportional distribution of consumers over segment depends on where consumption is most important and where the focus of the breeding program is. If your focus on the breeding program is we want to look at what is happening in cities, then you only go to cities. And if you don't really know, then you do half-half or according to your objectives. So the amount of people needed, the 85 here, is kind of similar to what the role of the thumb says for food science, the classical food science testing. So what are the advantages of TRICOT in relation to traditional consumer testing? Well, consumers compare concrete products, so there's no pondering over, do I like it extremely, or do I like it a little less, or am I neutral, or that kind of thing. So your consumer cognitive load is less. They deal with 3 samples only. More varieties can be evaluated at once while not increasing the total time you spend on your consumer testing. And direct and easy data collection integrated in the climate platform, which will also contribute to integration of data, breeding data, and all kind of climatic data that you want to connect. Structural allows the integration of jar, kata, and even overall liking. Within this TRICOT method consumer testing, we can include jar and even kata questions, and even overall liking if you want to do compare what kind of different data, different results you obtain from the different methods. Because the treated samples, we can add jar questions, we can also add kata questions. What are the disadvantages? There's a statistically efficiency loss between complete randomized block design and an incomplete block, and there's a formula there, and if you calculate that, you lose about 16% of efficiency loss. And then there's a small information loss because you're looking at ranking data, not scoring data, but that can be cancelled out because you are looking only at 3 samples, and you completely compare products, and you're not referring to abstract how do you say it? Abstract indicators of if it's good or not good. Then there is also, we had several questions about this TRICOT method, like, do you force people now to make a choice? If you have 3 food samples, A, B, and C, do you force now people to say, well, A, which is the best and which is the best and which is the worst? People might say, well, I think A and B are the same. Well, we have an option for that as well developed. Like we see later, you can see in the analysis, you can set, well, tied. For the best, they say, well, the 2 are the same. And if you then identify a worst, then the system will conclude, like, well, in this example, that A and C are equally best and B is worst. If you feel tied for both of them, then the system says, well, all are equal. This is an example of consumer testing in Benue and Osun State. We had separate trials grown and processed in each of the states by champion processors. State representative sampling in rural areas, small towns and cities, 8 varieties per state, 300 consumers tested in each state. And so 100 in villages, 100 in small towns, and 100 in the cities. These are the traits evaluated, and the social information we have highlighted, we have taken from the consumers to be able to segment the data afterwards. These were open questions because we also wanted to have some checks where are there more, maybe other attributes that are important in making, in deciding what is the best and the worst. Also, in your own words, kindly describe the taste of Abayo, because taste is a little bit of a tricky one. So we have some qualitative data also that can be coded and analyzed to see, to have a kind of cross-check. Then the preparation of the ABA from the GARI made by champion processors from the WP5 trial. So we had these trials in those 2 states, and from those trials, all the varieties were grown there and processed by champion processors. For each of the variety, we determined the amount of water that is suitable for each variety. What is the best ratio for each variety? So we don't standardize that overall, but as we are dealing with new varieties, we give each variety equal potential to express itself, even if it needs a different ratio, because the champion processors, they search for the same texture, and if they want to have the same texture with a little bit more water, then we allow that. So at that point, we standardize for each variety the water GARI ratio, and that will be used for the consumer testing. So each variety that is prepared at the consumer testing stage uses that information. So that's uses a standardized ratio for each variety. Here are some results of Bennu state. This is just very simple, the overall ranking underlined with red. You see that we had 8 varieties, and we see that the lowest variety below in the graph is clearly the best one. And then you go also for the different food characteristics that we included. You can see that the performance of each varieties. Well, this is nice, and we know now which people like and what they like best and what they don't like so much, which is informative and you can link that maybe to breeding data and do some cluster analysis. But what we really also want to know, why are certain varieties liked more than others? So if you now look at the probability of winning for each variety, for each of the traits evaluated, you can see, for example, that TMS 30572 is really liked because of its color and because of its taste and moldability, but especially because of the color. If you look at the traditional variety Akpu, you see that they are most liked, that they are performing quite high on stretchability, but color is not that good. So this gives you quite some good information to know what is happening, what are the strengths and weaknesses of each of the varieties. And here also we have a correlation between individual traits and overall appreciation. So you can see, if you only look at the best ranked or only look at the worst, you can see to what extent is smoothness or the different traits, how are they related to the overall liking. And you can see here that taste is enormously important, and that can be an effect because you do consumer testing. If you let people taste something, then the tasting is already kind of biased because people get something to eat, so the taste. That could be something, but anyhow, you can see how that relates. And the Kendall Tower combines the best and the worst. So that's really looking at both sides of the story. This is also something that you can get from those TRICOT data. Then the influence of the social covariates on variety preferences. For example, what we saw, looking at the Bennu data only, you can see the system, the ClimeUp system makes two groups, it's 4 nodes here, and there's an initial separation between the city and the rural areas, where in the city they really like one variety 30572, and other varieties are more or less all the same or not really liked. While that is different for going to the smaller towns and villages, where you see that specifically Igbo, Idoma, and Yoruba people, they like they have more preference. There's 3 varieties that come up. And then you have, if you look at occupation, are you on farm or out of the farm? So are you connected? Are you familiar with processing as a consumer, or are you just consuming and you never know, you don't have an idea how your product is made? Even that apparently that is also giving you different preferences. And of course, we can go into these nodes and make this slide, and then divide it by the nodes, and then we can probably see that in the city it's mostly color that is very much a trait that is important. But this can be analyzed further and be more precise, made more precise. So there are many statistical things possible with TRICOT methods, and also a normal PCA is not possible, but we can look into multidimensional scaling, which will provide you with similar results. Then coming to the objective of the RTB Foods project, which is really linking the consumer testing to food science descriptive analysis to determine thresholds. Well, we have data, we have different data, we have TRICOT rankings, we have overall rankings, traditional, these are all consumer testing data, and we have descriptive analysis, WP2. So it's really linking those sets of data, and there are several ways to do that. Then I want to highlight this is a slide. I want to highlight an example that was presented by Christophe Bourgault in the last RTB Food seminar, where he highlighted how he used the consumer jar, just about right, from traditional consumer testing, how he used that to link that data to measurements by panelists. You know, those panelists, they are trained like machines, because they give you a score for each trait. They will give on a scale from 1 to 9, they will say sourness, has a scale on the scale from 0 to 9, it has 4 sourness or 5. So that he linked the consumer testing to this data and was able to determine some thresholds, and also link that to the puncture force. To do that, he needed contrasting products. And as you see the list here, you need common attributes for jar and QDA. You need a consistent relationship between QDA and instrumental parameters. But what I want to highlight is that 7 or 8 is the minimum, and here he used 11 points, and those points have to be quite different, otherwise you don't get a curve. If you get similar varieties, then you probably don't get a curve, and you'll not get to your threshold. So how now to situate TRICOT use in consumer testing? Well, I see just 3 options there. It is to use consumer testing to determine variation in higher number of varieties, to be able to choose contrasting to varieties, to do classic consumer testing among 100 consumers to assure we can derive threshold. Furthermore, we can integrate jar and even Qatar or anything into TRICOT to directly assess more varieties and directly link these to WP2 food science descriptive analysis, possibility to capture different social segments even within that, allowing thresholds for important segments. Or 3, they use the TRICOT specific data, possibly integration of jar, Qatar, or overall liking into TRICOT to link directly to genetic breeding data, cluster analysis, and link directly to descriptive food science analysis, which are measurements by the sensorial panel, biophysical and chemical composition, instrumental measurements on food products. And one of those things where they do that is, I've cited here a paper where they link several consumer testings. So they didn't do TRICOT, but they did I think 12 varieties, but they just did it in packages of 4. They went to similar community. They did consumer testing with 12 varieties in batches of 4. And then it has to be mentioned here that climate or breed-based integration was also explicitly part of the ongoing 1,000 Farms TRICOT project. So it's really to make so that the TRICOT data in climate to facilitate that those data sets can easily be, well, more easily be integrated with breeding data, climate data, etc. So I want to end with this slide. The Climate TRICOT Data Management Analysis Platform and TRICOT approach are currently in development for improvement and innovation, integration of needed statistical analysis and approaches from different disciplines. So we are really open to work with you all on creating innovative methods to make sure that we are better combining more structurally combining user data with breeding data. And I want to give the floor to Bela, who is going to talk about a little bit on how consumer testing in Benue and Osun State was organized.
Thank you, Bela, for the presentation. I'm Bela Bolore. I'm here to give an insight to how we conduct the consumer testing to TRICOT approach in Benue and Osun State. Next slide. I'm presenting this in my colleagues with their name appears on the slide. Next slide, Bela. So this presentation will go into three aspects: product preparation, we have the sample management, and consumer selection. To prepare the products, we need certain materials which include portable gas, food warmer, measuring cylinders, sensitive scale, and some others listed there. And when we are working with the sample processor during particular processing, we have determined the optimum quantity of hot water ratio with Gary. So we are given each product the ability to express itself. So we measure how the quantity of Gary we need on daily basis as we are going to the feed. And while on the feed, we ensure we arrive location earlier so that we make the product in the presence of the people in the community so that they can trust the food we bring to them, and they can to create familiarity as well as to create awareness for people to come and test the food product. So especially in village, we involve their women to be part of what we do, but we make the control that what we did is hygienic and well done as prepared to give a standard of what people want to test. Next slide. So for sample management, next slide, we prepare each variety of EBA one after the other. And when we make preparation, we label it, pack it, and put it in the food flask to make it warm. The quantity of EBA prepared is depend on the number of the consumer we target for each location. Before we start evaluation, we have a staff that's been assigned to distribution of the package, and each evaluator has the package combination as well as consent form for the consumer to sign. So the staff that have been assigned will bring the product for the evaluator, and then they too will cross-check with the list with them, and then we have the number of package to use in location being shared based on the number of respondents we want to test in each location. Next slide. So this is a sample of the number of samples we did. And from there, we started with a very low number of consumers and discovered that within a period of time, each consumer spent within 3 to 5 minutes to complete the evaluation of the product. And then we have 4 evaluators, and we spend like 32 to 35 minutes to handle 25 consumers. In average, if the location is not far from each other, we can do within 100 or 120 consumers in a day, depending on the experience of those who anchor the evaluation as well as the response from the consumer. The consumers vary in their response, and the time taken to do the testing, checking of the product varies. Next slide. For the next slide is selection of the consumer. We work with the extension agents and a contact farmer to know the particular area being identified for consumption of EBA. So the way they are there, we ensure that we involve all the areas within the state, the village, the city, as well as the town. And we ensure we have equal number of respondents, including their sex and their age group being considered. When we get to a community, we ensure before we allow anyone to participate, we ask a preliminary question like, what time last do you consume the product? How often do you consume? So that we're able to streamline those who participate, that we don't just have anything can hurry that are not a consumer of the product to participate in the evaluation of the product. And when we finish on a daily basis, we cross-check our data to ensure that we are having equal number of male and female, as well as age group that participate in the product testing. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thanks a lot, Bela, for your presentation. It's now, I'll not stop unsharing. I stop sharing, sorry, stop. And Gospel will share her screen for the last presentation.
Okay. Hello everyone. Dwayne Gospel. Okay. I'll now go presenting on the user climate to create a new project and ODK setup for data collection. Briefly, I'll be going on an introduction on ClimeUp. This is what we're going to be looking at in this presentation. Registering your project, which also entails on-farm trial testing, product testing, and both from trial to testing. Assigning feed agents, which are also trained and meritors. Defining our technology options, which are also known as our varieties. Preparing registration forms, which is known as the questionnaire for the project. Preparing participatory registration, and also the ODK setup. ClimeUp is a free software and online platform for designing and management of participatory test projects. It is friendly, user-friendly. It is very easy to operate using the TRICOT approach. Firstly, you have to have an account with ClimeUp, and with the link shown, you can create an account easily on that. Next, this is just an overview of a project that was just concluded, our WP5 project, using ClimeUp, and it's using your Android mobiles and ODK. Okay, after creating an account, next you sign up using your username and password, then you click on project and add new project. You have something like this, and you just create a project by typing the project code. You can use the name of the crop, the year, location. Just carefully enter the details, like in this description box, and your tags to donor sponsors. Right, you separate each using a comma, and just carefully enter the details. As saying it is TRICOT, so we can only use just 3. And the number of participants you want, we work with 300 participants, and just click create project. Okay. As I said earlier, ClimeUp is user-friendly, so it will always bring out the guideline. This is just a simple illustration, tell you that everything you have to do is under your library. Okay. Next, we assign our feed agents, also known as our trained emeritors, by clicking on the gray box, assign feed agent, then we'll go to the library, feed agent, to create profiles for our emeritors. Or you assigned, if you are using ClimeUp, then you know you already have this already registered feed agent. But if you are new to ClimeUp, then how to create a new feed agent profile, you just enter the name, the password, and the username. Okay, I'm going to show you an example of, I just created this, John Joseph. I use the username John5, password 123. And once I'm done, I just click on add and go back to my main menu. Next, in our main menu, you just click on assign feed agent, and you select the number of feed agents you want. You can have as many feed agents on ClimeUp. Just select the ones you want to assign to this particular project or testing. Then you click on add feed agent. Okay, the right box, this box indicates that these are the number of feed agents that has been assigned to this project. If you still want to add, you can click on this other part and just click on the green box, add feed agent. This process can be repeated and you can have as many feed agents as you want for your project. Okay, after assigning your feed agent, Climber will bring something like this for you. And the blue color is indicating that your enumerators or your feed agent for the project has been completed. You can still go back to the library to repeat the previous steps if you still want to add or remove any feed agent. Next, we'll go to our technology options, also known as our varieties. Climber will have some technology options with it, but if this is not what you're working on, how to create your own varieties, then you just go to library technology options, and next you click on create new technology. So it will come up with something like this. You just add the name of the technology options you want to create, and you click on add and close. So this is an example. I just created IMO WP5 variety. So it's always good that if you're working with different states, it's good you indicate by using the states, like as saying, you can say Osun varieties, Benin varieties, so that it will be easier for you to not to make any mistake. Then you just enter the name, now enter the details for the varieties you want for that particular technology option. You click on create new technology option. So you can just type out the varieties you want for the project here, or you can just copy it from an Excel document and paste here. Please ensure they are on separate lines as seen, then click on add and close. Then you go back to your main menu, click on select technology options and mark the varieties you want. Climber was already started that you have 8 varieties on this particular technology option, but it has not signified that these are the ones you want him to work with. So you have to select the options and save changes. So this is indicating that this project is working with IMO WP5 varieties. The available varieties are 8, and the selected varieties to be worked with this project is also 8. So you can also repeat this process by going back to the previous steps if you still want to add or remove. So this is indicating that our feed agents and our technology options have been registered in Climber. Next, we'll click on technology. Okay, you can go back to you can go back to the library technology options to repeat previous steps as mentioned. Next, we just click on prepare registration form, which is also known as our questionnaire. And Climber has something like as seen in the registration form. We have package code and farmer name. This cannot be edited. So it's better you just create a section for your project. Create a section just like this, the WP5 consumer testing. Just write something about the content description and save the section. Next, the basic farmer information like the gender, age should always fall under registration. So whenever we're creating a question, it's always good you use a unique numeric pattern like question 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Because if you use a particular number like question 1, and you're coming back to set another question, maybe using age question 1 to notify you on Climber that that particular number variable code has been used to avoid conflict. So it's good to use a unique pattern when designing your questions. Okay, and next you just enter your variable code. I send variable name, I enter taste, and in my type I use testing of options because I'm ranking, I'm comparing a best and worst for a particular trait, which is taste. So ranking of options, and the category, the section I created earlier on was WP5, meaning all the questions I'm creating is going to be under WP5 as same taste. Okay. And these other aspects answered tied, meaning I don't want any tied response, and I want it to be this particular question is compulsory to be answered. And just click on save and close. Okay. Now I'm going to be explaining the category, the test. Ranking of options, as I said earlier, is when you want to compare between varieties based on what's the same trait. Test is when you are using an open-ended question. Comparison with check, when there's a check involved in your project that you also want to compare. We also have select one. That's when, for example, I'm to ask gender. Option A should be female, option B should be male. So in that case, I should just put select one, meaning the respondent is to choose between male or female. We also have select multiple and other categories of other types in your category. Okay. So, okay, this is just an example of a question I've created. I've entered my variable code. The name I entered under my variable name is personal attribute best, and I use type because it's an open-ended question. The category was the section I created initially, WP5 consumer testing. So this is how it will look like in my ODK app. And I'll just save and close and go back to my main menu. Okay, in this, now to prepare my participant registration, meaning my questionnaire, I want it to look like in my ODK. So all the questions that I have been creating have been under my registration in my library. Now I just want to I have to drag each of the questions I have created to my registration form. And this is how it will look like in my ODK app. So it's easily just drag from your registration. You can just drag the community name to this other section. So you drag from your questions available from your library to your registration form. Okay, as seen, so this is just a brief illustration. So I've dragged the questions from my library to this part to the main section. So in this project, I'm having package code, farmer name, marital status, and age. This is this under registration, and under the main project, I have taste, color, stretchability. So I can always, if I want taste to come before color, I just have to drag upwards. So you can always swap, just depending on the way you just want your questions to be arranged. Okay. So you can always go back to edit your agent, field agent, your select technology options, your questions, if eventually you just want to update or change it. So it is indicating now that our project is completed. Next, we generate, just click on the green box to generate our packages. Okay, Climber will automatically generate the randomization of all the packages for you. So what you just have to do is just to scroll down to the bottom and you see something like this. So these are my 300 packages because I included 300 participants. So each participant will have 3 varieties. You can modify if eventually you do not like the randomization you're seeing, or you can just click confirm and it will automatically take you to the main menu. So it means my project registration has been completed and data can be collected. If you still want to edit, then you just have to click on cancel registration and go back. But do not do this when data collection has already started on the feed. So next, we just go click on download on our main menu to see the packages that Climber asked for us. I'll just quickly describe each of them. We have packages with QR, randomized trial packages, feed agent, QR code to set up ODK and registration form. So this is our randomized varieties. This is the list. So package 1, it as same, you just see each packages with their varieties, saving as ABC and Climber. After, okay, what you just have to do, you have to configure your ODK. So you go to the Play Store, your app or your tablet, and just install ODK. After installation, you configure using QR code. It's faster and easier. So each feed agent should scan the QR code using their unique QR code. So you just take your ODK. Prevention, my name is Blessing, so I should go to Blessing's QR and scan this to avoid errors when collecting the data. Okay, this is a breakdown of how the project, overview of how the project, the questions, everything will look like in ClimeUp. And this is the view of the downloaded list of packages for barcode in ClimeUp. So peradventure, I am a Merito. I'm working on package 1. So what I should do after configuring my ODK, so I should just scan package 1 and to bring out options for farmer's name, registration, so data entry, which is collection can take place. And when there is a duplication, like if peradventure I am Blessing and Joshua also scans using package 1, these duplications will also show in ClimeUp. So we can also avoid duplications by assigning to the numerators, okay, to use package 1 to this particular number when collecting data. So links to further tutorials on ClimeUp, and also visit these links and all that. Okay, that's all. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Thank you to the three of you for this very detailed presentation and very practical one for those of us who would consider carrying out this type of evaluation in the field. So thanks again for this actually multiple collaborations work. The most important thing is that your presentation highlights the benefits of TRICOT as compared to regular consumer testing, which is of particular interest for considering RTB Foods Work Package 5, which ambition is to propose an overall approach and a toolbox for breeders to assess the potential for adoption of their new RTB clones and engaging with RTB end users. So thank you, and I'm now opening the floor to questions. There were many already in the chat box, already addressed actually, but I think I should go through them quickly for those of us who will not have access to the chat box, especially for those of us who will be watching the recording. So there was a first question regarding color. Grant said that it's not a trait, but it's more a category. And he asked how color could be more precisely defined, to which Tessie actually responded, insisting on the importance of color for several RTB food products and concluding with an interesting and insightful Igbo adage saying that the eye will eat before the mouth eats. So Dominic also brought precisions. And saying that the chromometer at lab level is a very easy tool that could be used in the lab or in the field. And the next step will then be to correlate the measurements of luminosity and color measured with this tool with the results coming from the sensory panel. There was another question from Gérard. Is there a technique or a software that enables to combine 3 samples among the 8 to 20 samples to be tested? And Stephen and Olamide answered that yes, the ClimeUp software is capable of randomizing the number of varieties to be tested, 8, 20 or more, into 3 packages to be evaluated. And Bela answered as well, brought precisions, mentioning that the plaquette loose and Bradley-Terry analysis can do it. Bela, do you want to say something more about this? Just maybe bring clarifications about these 2 analyses.
Yes, so you can do a normal randomization, but then you will not have the optimal. What you want to have, if you have 10 varieties and you have several consumers and you want to make different combinations of 3, you want to make it like that it's most informative, no? that you have all these 3 combinations that they optimally inform you on the overall ranking, and that randomization can be done by the Plackett-Loose tree model. And after that, the ranking you can then analyze with a Bradley-Terry statistical procedure. These are statistical procedures that are also already, especially Bradley-Terry is already present in food science applications in other areas. So these are not new statistical models, but they are all integrated into the climate.
Thank you, Béla. Next questions.
Jacob is also online. He can go further into the statistic if needed, maybe.
Okay, Jacob, do you want to say something?
Yes, I can say something. Yeah, Bradley-Terry is, and also Plackett-Loose model, which is now used. They were actually used or developed for food science applications. In the start, these ranking types of exercises started mostly in food science, and we kind of use them for farm experiments, but actually they are part of the kind of food science discipline. So they're indeed not new. They're pretty old actually, but not they were not always implemented well, etc. And now also with recent developments, it's much easier to combine it with what we call covariates. So what influences the rankings in terms of the environmental conditions or the socioeconomic characteristics of the people who are testing, and also the genotypic values of the samples that we have, or lab determined values. So there's a lot more possible now than say 20 years ago. But the models actually are not foreign to food science per se. Thank you.
Great precisions. Thank you for this addition, Jacob. Next questions. So we're from Xiaofei. So Xiaofei asked about the Czech varieties. So I do not see the Czech varieties in the example. Would you please explain how we consider Czech varieties in the experiment design? And Béla answered that several Czech varieties are integrated in the total number of varieties. And within the 8 varieties, we had 3 varieties that functioned as Czechs. Local chosen by processors, common popular variety in the area, and a breeder optimal variety for the product. And there was another question from Xiaofei, I think. Do we use all the data collected? Is there any step to check the quality of the data or identify outliers? And I did not see any answer. Maybe Béla, if you can provide an answer to this question.
Through the statistical methods, you can identify indeed outliers. But how to test the quality of the data? How do you mean test? Of course, we can identify outliers easily because some of those things that are, for example, rated very differently, you can see that there's something wrong there. So you can identify those. But or do you mean some other triangulation of the data? Or as I've been mentioning, we could include also the jar analysis to add some of the traditional food science tools to it. So then you have the 3 varieties, and then for each 3 variety, you can ask for some traits also. Is it as you like, or is it excellent, or is it not? Is it too for different traits? That could be added as well, and then you could, which would be interesting actually to see how you get differences in data, which we are actually now planning also with the RTP. In the cassava breeding unit, we are planning to do classical consumer testing and also TRICOT. We will try to do both and then try to link it to physiochemical analysis and breeding data. So that would be provide good insight on how the methods are informative, on what the advantages are, and how close the results are related.
I hope this answers your question, Xiaofei.
And also, there's also a possibility with these data where you see deviance. You can have, for example, a certain region or certain people with a certain social background, or they belong to a social category. You can identify if there's something happening there which is very different. They might like a product that others don't like. You can use a kind of positive deviance analysis to see what is going on there, and then you can identify also. You can identify in those regions. You can do some qualitative research to know what kind of mechanism is going on there, and that would be providing good contextual information on to have insight on what is happening there, and if it's really what is wanted, what is happening there. I'm talking now about maybe not food science directly, but also about varieties. If you see that something is catching on there very much and not in another region, what are people doing there, and what is the circumstances? What circumstances can be identified there, which makes it comprehensible how certain technologies function within a certain context. And then also the very important aspect is also the link to I think for varieties especially, is the link to climate data and to inform on G/E interactions, and that might also be valuable for food products.
Thank you very much, Bela. So you mentioned you identify outliers. So the way to identify outliers is just based on checking the data, or there is any systematic way to identify that?
Now maybe Jacob can answer for that more precisely.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, so outliers, when you have ranking data, it's a bit difficult, right? You have 3 items, you put them in a certain order. Any order is okay, right? There's no outlier in the sense, because it's not continuous data. So outliers usually refers to continuous data. So for example, if you tell me that your plot of potato had 30 tons per hectare in yield, it's probably an outlier, right? But if you tell me this variety is better than this one, and this variety is better than this other one, you don't really get outliers. We do have differences in data quality from one farmer to another, but also the methods are really quite robust because they basically, if people give us random data, that adds to the random error in the model. It doesn't really bias the results. So that can happen in some cases. But it doesn't really cause a bias because it's a blind trial. There's several reasons for that. So the data quality issue, because of that crowdsourcing approach, doesn't become such a big issue. But we also do have a number of ways to do quality control, but not by detecting outliers. So there are other ways, like looking at the internal consistency of the data, whether people have really continued and done the whole experiment. Not lost the plot during the drought in the middle and then still answering questions at the end, for example. So there are a couple of ways, and I'm also asking the impression of the enumerators about the quality of the answers. Just in the kind of the rapport they establish with the farmer, you can know whether they're giving socially desirable answers. Yes, I did it. Well, actually, they didn't do it. So there are several ways to do quality control. But it's not, but outlier detection is not so much part of it for the kind of the core data, which is the ranking. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think maybe the checking strategy might, after we accumulate more data of the TRICOT studies, so the checking variety might help us to adjust kind of systematically how the TRICOT experiment goes, right? Whether it aligns the result well with different years with yeah, so thank you.
Thank you. Yes, that as well. Yeah, from a trial analysis perspective, that's correct. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Jacob and Bela for this discussion. So let's move to another topic that has been addressed in the chat box. regarding the socio-demographic characteristics of the consumers, and Aurélie is asking whether it is recorded. And Béla answered that yes, of course, these characteristics are recorded, collected directly using the ODK software. And Stefan also added that you can actually capture any other variables, including demographics. You just have to include these variables in the design of the form for the consumer testing. And Béla also added that several other things like poverty probability index, or even more characteristics regarding the diet of people, the ethnic groups, if necessary, can be included in the form. I don't know if you want to say something about this, otherwise we move.
Yeah, and open questions, that can be specific open questions that you can add. That's no problem. So you can use this also to do qualitative analysis. Just so you will have all these data, all these answers, and then you can code them, and then you can analyze, do qualitative analysis on those questions as well.
Okay, great. Question from Priscilla. Yes, Béla?
No, I said no. I see that Graham was worried about that. It's all nice, and then, but where are the insights, the particular insights from the different particularities or nuances and all that? But I think Jacob has responded to that, but he responded to that from the viewpoint of TRICOT, using TRICOT for TRICOT trials. But within the consumer testing, I think I think because we have more time, also we can add more social information, and we have more also tools to segment the information according to ethnic group or other things that might come up. And also the qualitative questions that you add are important yeah, it's really an important part of the approach, that it's not just high numbers and having your statistics, but that we can do segmentation within the sample to see what specific groups might like or not like.
Lots of questions and comments in the chat box. So I'm following up on Priscilla regarding, is there any recommendation to use TRICOT as a complement of the other food science tests, such as JAR, just all right tests, kata tests, or is there a plan to also check with which has more robust, which one has more robust results? And she thinks that it would be interesting to do a comparison of TRICOT results with the other traditional tests, so that researchers have an option depending on the resources available, etc., unless if they provide different kinds of information of data. Do you want to bring some answer to this question? I think you did, Béla, in the chat box, but I cannot find your answer anymore.
I think it did it orally. No, I said that we are planning now to do TRICOT and normal consumer testing. So we might do 12 varieties or so. And then we do that a TRICOT on that. And then we also do those 12 varieties for normal consumer testing. So then you will have to do in groups of 5 or 4 or 2 groups of 6. Well, 6 is a lot, but at least that's what we are planning. So you will have the same area and the same people, well, not exactly the same people, because that's statistically also not correct, but you go to the same communities and with the same areas, you use the same sample strategy, and you do the 2 different methods, and you can compare.
There were a bunch of questions regarding the ClimeUp tool. Olamide confirms that the ClimeUp tool allows data extraction in Excel format. It was a concern coming from Cedric. She also confirms that it is a friendly tool because also it allows to draw from other projects, as the library provides options that have been used by other projects. and Jakob brought the addition that these are two integrated tools, the ODK one and the CliMob one. The ODK is for Android phone and the CliMob is accessed through a web browser. So there were questions regarding the CliMob tool. Did you hear me when I mentioned these questions regarding the friendliness of this tool?
Yeah, I did. But
okay, so actually,
I don't know of others.
Okay, so the
Akim has received a lot of responses already.
Yes, exactly, because he was.
The idea, it is absolutely not necessary to have internet connection where you do your research. You can, for example, you can collect quite a lot of data in a rural area where there's absolutely no access to the internet, and then 3 days later you arrive where you can have internet and you can upload all your data. So it's not dependent on network in that sense. Well, it is, but I mean, it's very flexible in that sense.
Yes, and Olamide mentioned that it's advisable to test run your gadgets or your tools and ensure that this fits. So it is better to use the gadget only for data collection and avoid other activities or to use the gadget for other things. And Ted also, hi Ted, mentioned that they have used the method quite a bit, and one challenge was that if the enumerators have phones, they have trouble scanning the QR codes. So he mentions that we have this problem during consumer
testing. It's better
testing.
to use tablets, yeah.
By having a laptop open, so the specific codes could be scanned on the laptop or tablets, as you mentioned, Bella. So maybe, yeah, okay. And there was a question from Aurélie and actually a bunch of questions from Aurélie and Dominique. Where are they? No, this was Xiaofei and Dominique actually asked about the let's say the budget. And so would you please tell us, Xiaofei, would you please tell us the amount of work required, for example, the number of persons managing the experiment and how many days it took? And Dominique is asking about the cost of setting up the trials, the necessary coordination and the logistics for data collection. And he mentioned that it may not be possible without adequate fundings. So what is the cost of a trial to evaluate the new next-gen clones, for example? He's asking, including researcher and technician time per diems and accommodation. So do you have a rough idea? Belo mentioned that it is ongoing.
Belo, I think Belo can give a best indication on that.
Belo, are you there?
For the cost is manageable because of the number of the respondents involved. Like in Nigeria, we have like 220 participants on the field that have the trials. And when it's compared, I think we don't go there all the time. We have trained them, they will collect it and send it out to us.
Sorry, but we are talking about consumer testing, not about, I think it's not about TRICOT trials.
Okay, for the consumer.
It's also about the full cost of the TRICOT.
Okay, for the consumer testing, the cost is less because we have 3 or 4 people working on the field to collect the data, and within 2-3 days, they can finish the consumer testing, which is a very short period, compared to when we did the WP1 Active 5, and we have like 150 consumer, 4 people, I would say like a week, because we have to move from one community to another, and they have a lot of seat to fill. So this is a less cost effective compared to when we are using the scale of 1 to 9. Thank you.
Okay, but my question was on the full TRICOTs. Did you have an idea from the NextGen project? What is the full cost to produce the stems, to go to the field, to implement the trial, and to collect the data at the end? What is the full cost for the project for testing 12 or 18 varieties? I think you are.
I think I can't. Okay, go ahead, Bela.
We have 30 varieties tested.
30 varieties.
And then you have to think about $15,000 for the trials.
50,000.
Well, if you have the staff time, you have to add the staff time, it will get to $20,000 probably.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the first that we've been giving trainings, and it's all the first time. Yeah.
Now, but
it's running from between 20 and 25,000, including staff costs, at least. Yes. Something like that.
I am thinking of the NARS who have very few funding, and how can we reduce this cost, because it's impossible for the NARS to use it.
I think it depends on the number of the respondents.
It's also about partnerships. We have to build partnerships. We cannot, like IITA, cannot manage, go and to all those participants, identify all those participants, set up the trials. That has to be done by partnerships with NGOs, and I think Jacob or somebody else already highlighted the 1 Acre Fund that people are working together with. Mm-hmm. So it's really about building partnerships, because indeed otherwise you don't get you don't get also the scale that you want. You don't want to stay with 320 people, but you want to go to 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people.
Yes. But I think it's something very important to study.
Sure, of course, yeah.
The development.
So one of the things, if I can come in, is because it's simpler, because a lot of the complicated stuff is stuff that you can do by preparing the packages, etc. And then in the field, it is simpler in the sense that you don't have to find farmers and so on. So I'm talking about on-farm testing. That has helped us to work much more with partners. So large partners who have a lot of farmer members and so on. And that has really brought costs down. So 1 Acre Fund is now spending its own money on it. So if we can have these as partnerships with NARS, and because they're interested in the seed sales, and so it becomes part of their business model to do it. So then the cost can really go drastically down, because it pays off for example, for 1 Acre Fund to keep getting new varieties, and they would pay for the ongoing trial costs, because they do these trials to include new varieties in their variety catalog. So that's a win-win. And so in the 1,000 Farms project, one of the activities is to explore those kinds of partnerships. Yes. And to bring breeding programs together. So not doing this only for one crop, one partner, but by bringing together the different breeding programs around larger partners, we can gain these kind of synergies. We don't need to train and retrain people all the time to do on-farm testing or consumer testing. So these organizations would also have their more fixed teams to do this. So then by generating these kind of win-wins, I think we can move forward, but that needs us to come together, right? The CGR, NARS, and these partner organizations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. And Tessie has been mentioning something in the chat box, that it costs between 15 to 20,000 to work with TRICOT and more than 300 farmers in Nigeria. Tessie, do you want to maybe bring precisions on the statement?
Yeah. Good evening. Oh, good evening, everybody. Why I'm saying between $15,000 and $20,000. Here we NRCRI, the farmers we're working with, the locations are closer. So that's why we're getting a little lower cost this way. And because IITA are working with farmers that are in Benue and Oshu, a little bit of distance. And like I said, the social benefit is, you cannot quantify it, because here you're involving a lot of farmers, and the farmers are feeling that they are also part of research work, and they belong. And they also, most of our TRICOT farmers are telling us that they now have a voice because they are part of research. So these are the things. If you put only financial benefit without looking at the social benefit, it will look as if the amount is much. But when you look at the social capital of it, I think the TRICOT is a tool that should be encouraged in most of the research work, because you're reaching out to too many people. People are also, their capacity is built, leadership roles are built, because you have leaders who take up responsibility in doing some of the work the scientists are supposed to be doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Bela. Thank you, Tessie.
Thank you, Tessie.
Thank you, Tessie, Dominic.
So I think before we close, let's go back to two very scientific questions from Aurélie. There is one regarding how to manage to get results if the varieties are similar in their sensory characteristics or profile, let's say. And another question, have you already managed to correlate some of the TRICOT sensory results with physical-chemical properties, which is actually one of the next steps, major steps in RTB foods?
The TRICOT data have been used to identify varieties that are good and that are less good, and this information has been used by WP2 to start determining thresholds. So, but furthermore, the specific analysis of TRICOT with segmentation and all that still has to be combined with all the data. So it's the next step. But it has already functioned as a kind of way to determine which varieties can be classified as liked by people and which are absolutely not liked. So those extremes have been informative, and they have been. Michael has shown me, Michael Adisukan has shown me some results on that, where you see that there's indeed really a difference, physical, chemical, there's a difference between those varieties that is apparent. And this is of course a rough start, but the exact combination of combining those the data sets is something that we still have to do.
Great.
Which we have planned for this year also on a new consumer testing, where we will do TRICOT consumer testing and also normal consumer testing. And of course, analysis of the roots, analysis of the products, making products in the lab, and try to see if there's how we can calibrate determine the thresholds.
We'll do that in Cameroon in one month.
Oh, 1 month, the roots are still small. Eh?
Yes, in March or April.
It's not going to happen in March, that's for sure, because they will be too small. But no, that's also part of it. But also with Ismail, we are going to he proposed to do those two things together, and then that's very good, I think, because then you will see the TRICOT data and you see the normal consumer test.
Thank you. I think it's time to close the call. We have lasted more than an hour, so thanks for staying with us.
1.5. Thanks, yes. Thanks everybody for your precious time.
Bela and team.
Yes.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
And team, very beautiful presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tessie, for your support.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Tessie. Great remark.
Okay, so thank you, Bela, Belo, and Gospel. Do you agree if we put this on the RTB Foods YouTube channel for everybody to access it?
I don't have any problem with it. Maybe
Yeah,
I'm overseeing some ethical thing. No, I don't think so. There's not. No.
You can check and
even a photo. No, the photo and the presentations. Other people, I don't know, but they are not. No, but it's no problem. They're all small and.
Okay. Yes, I think they are small. Okay, so it will be available on the YouTube channel very soon. So congratulations again, and thank you. Thank you for your excellent presentations. And
well, thanks so much for pushing us to organize it. Thanks so much.
That will be very useful. Okay, take care, everybody, and see you in 2 weeks.